I was attending the Convergence Symposium asking the question to chefs, can gastronomy be an art form? And it's been now a little handful of days, and I'm really interested in the question, and I cannot seem to let go of it. So I'm going through my notes, and I'm trying to pull out what I think would be the most interesting takeaways from this thing. Now, first of all, Alchemist is, I just saw a title of a magazine, I think it was a magazine, online saying, is this the world's most creative restaurant? And you have a restaurant that is extremely noteworthy, most definitely, because they are giving you an experience that is really much more about other things than the food. But it is a restaurant, and it is regarded at the moment as being one of the world's top restaurants. So I have many opinions about that, because that's how I am. But it's not so much that I want to talk about as it is the fact that they have arranged this festival. It's called it's not a festival. They have arranged a symposium, and it's called, you can't see anything, the stupid thing. It says Convergence. Convergence meaning, it's blank. Thought it was a program. Convergence meaning the opposite of divergence. We are bringing things together, and as I have understood it, the point is to bring art and cooking together. So the concept of the thing was, besides what I attended, which was sort of the cheap version, costing you something like 35 euros to attend to what was an actual symposium with talks and people talking and trying to answer those questions. The real deal was 5 days of dinners by 170 chefs, I believe. They're all written here. From all over the world. They really pulled out the big guns. Rasmus Kofoed, well, he's local, so that's easy. Le Calandre. They had Aponiente, Quintonil, fantastic restaurants from all over the house. Atomics, New York City, Schloss Schauenstein. And they were all invited to cook a dinner. They did a dinner every night with, I think 15 chefs or so. And they obviously invited a bunch of people to come have the dinners. For one small moment, because this is my caveat. I've never eaten at Alchemist, and I'm a little ashamed to say it, but I'll get to that later. I considered it for a short moment this time, but the dinner cost 16,000 kroner, 2,500 euros. So I didn't. I went for the cheap version for 35 euros. And this is the thing now. Strangely, this so-called most creative restaurant in the world is extremely elitist and extremely exclusive, which is fine. Like, I don't mind. Because when you do something that costs, I think the menu price is around 800 euros now. Like, of course it is exclusive. But whenever anybody does any sort of event, everybody's so afraid that, people are going to say we're elitist. So we dish out a little thing, and then we invite a bunch of people, and we invite chef students, and chef students come and look at them, how interested they are, and then everything is fine, right? So all in the fear of feeling elitist, which is apparently the worst thing you can be, which is kind of pointless. Like, it's pointless for you to be afraid of being elitist if you are running a fine dining restaurant. It's fucking pointless. But anyways, I have to give them this. I had a great time. I spent 30 euros and I heard talks, some better than others, but it sparked a lot of interest in me because this touched on things that I have considered for many, many, many years and thought about for many years, but now I kind of have the time since I sold all my restaurants and I'm just sitting here. The questions asked. We go through the speakers and try and make sense of what they were asking, because I think that's the interesting way of doing it. So I have a little camera here and I'm trying to make sense of this through the art of the Sharpie. So convergence. What we want to bring together is cooking, let's say gastronomy, and art. This is supposed to be the opposite of divergence, where nobody agrees about anything. Here we need to agree about something. And what we need to agree on, apparently, is that cooking is an art form. So, the speakers, Rasmus Munk, chef, and really wants to be an artist, or really wants to be acknowledged as an artist. I do not in any way refute that he is not an artist, because I most certainly think so. I think that anyone that wants to be an artist is an artist. That's the whole point. But Rasmus Munk comes up on stage and asks one question. Why can we not talk about these things? So when he did so, he did so because he was explaining about how he had gone to conference in Spain, and then he had talked about his inspiration for a dish that he called hunger, and his inspiration for the dish was commercials from UNICEF or advertisement from UNICEF with pictures of poor, hungry African children. And then he made a dish which was, I'll put a picture of it there, and it's a rib cage out of metal, and then he put rabbit breast, I think it was, put on top, and then flowers, and it was provocation, right? Provocation. It was like, don't you feel guilty that you are eating this? Since, like, we wanna point you towards an important case, which is hunger, but we do so in the context of a very, very expensive dinner. So when you eat it, you come, I don't know, do you feel guilty? Yeah, it's a provocation. Okay, that's good. So he puts up pictures of himself on the stage where he's like more pensive. He's like thinking, and he's sketching. And what I find really interesting is how he keeps asking the question, why can we not think like this? Why can we not be considered an artist? And I just have a hard time making sense of who has ever said that you cannot think like that. I mean, there's a very interesting parallel that is from a few years back, from another chef that is famous, but maybe had a more famous moment a few years ago, or many years ago, when I was an apprentice, and that is Paul Cunningham. He had a restaurant called The Pole. I'm running out of Sharpie here, goddammit. Pole. Amazing restaurant. I came to eat there, and I'll show you one thing. I'm back. This was a menu from the Pole when I ate in 2010. And see this? It's beautiful. This is art. They would print the menu on this thicker paper. He would dedicate the name of the... this is Kim Rosen, my old business partner and friend. Unfortunately passed away now. Rest in peace, Kim. And he would splash paint on this. And what you would see Paul sitting at a desk. He would be sitting at a desk where his he would kind of paint. He would paint the dishes, and what he would do, he would just like, make these small sketches of dishes. And here's the sauce, and I'm gonna put a puree here, and there's the beef, and I like this. And he used watercolors. He was a real artist, and I think that's completely reasonable. I think the main difference is, and I'm not going to be Rasmus Munk's therapist, but if you want to make art that is so consistently provoking people, so there's one dish that is the hunger. We have this strange sort of the rib cage and all that, with the flowers, which is kind of weird. And then you have there's a chocolate which is shaped like a coffin. And I heard someone say that they cried. A little coffin. And it's a chocolate bar, and it's wrapped into a chocolate bar sort of packaging. And I think it's called Guilty Pleasure. And then you eat it, and then you need to think about how everybody, all the chocolate is made by with child labor, and it's really sad, and it's like it's guilty. So I think guilt and shame is very much the theme. And to some extent, this is interesting because it has to be like the joke of the century to have people pay a shit ton of money to come to a very, very exclusive restaurant. And with exclusive, I mean in the sense that it costs a ton of money, but more than anything, it's fucking impossible to get a table. And the main message is for you to be ashamed of what you're doing there. I think that's really interesting. So, if you want to do a little therapy, I'm thinking, why? Like, is Rasmus Munk ashamed? Is it shame? Are you ashamed of what you're doing? Since that is what you make people want to feel. Because if the question is, why can we not be seen as artists? I don't think it's a problem. Like, look at this. I made this. Does that make me an artist? Banana. I think so. I do this with my kid. I've done this. These are sketches. I just enjoy it. That's art. If you want to make it art, it is art. And if people perceive it as art, it is art. But there's this thing that seems to be a big theme within this restaurant. And that is, why can we not talk about these things? why am I not good enough to be considered an artist? I don't see why you want to ask that question. The key is to ask yourself another question, or to tell yourself something else, and that is, I'm an artist if I want to be an artist. If you're a chef and you like cooking food and you have some sort of intentional expression that you want to send out some message, you want to say something, you're an artist. If people perceive it as an art, good for you as an artist. If they don't, no one gives a fuck about an artist. Or no, you shouldn't give a fuck. So, to get back on track, Paul Cunningham truly was an artist. The Paul was a very artistic thing. It was a lot about aesthetics. No, it was the visual it was a visual art. He had a way of putting together cooking and painting, and I think it was brilliant because it was with lightness. It was with a sense of making things beautiful and understanding that because he as a chef was doing both, I think it brought up the cooking, it elevated it to another level. So the Alchemist way, why can we not talk about these things, is like it's art in a little, I think it's in a little different way. And I want to talk about that later, but I think it's like art can provoke, and I think art is very interesting when it provokes. But I think it should also do more than provoke. And I think when the intention is just to provoke, and that, you know, with a message that is so fucking clear, the risk is that it becomes a little lazy, becomes a little boring, becomes a little too obvious. When anything that is too obvious is kind of boring. And this is the next thing. Oh, I don't want anybody to feel that we are elitist. Why is that a problem? Are you ashamed of being elitist? Don't be ashamed of being elitist. I think, and I'm a strong believer, and I'm going to make people upset, that all art must be exclusive. All great art must be exclusive. Why? If you want to resonate with someone or some people, you necessarily cannot resonate with everybody. People have different opinions. People have different aesthetics. People have different views on things, different perspectives. So if I make something and you really think that it touches you and it really creates some emotions in you that are special to you, we create a connection and we resonate. If you want to do that with everybody, that is not possible. But when you really want to make everybody happy and you really want to make sure that everybody really resonates with you, I think that there's an element of shame in it. I think that that's sad, because you are there in the for sure the most expensive restaurant in this country, probably the most ambitious restaurant that, you know, fine dining has ever heard of. It is loaded with money. It is also not a profitable restaurant at all. It goes at a deficit, but it has the biggest sugar daddy this country can provide, with big pockets, and everything is possible. And are you ashamed of it? Since everybody needs to feel guilty and be provoked to feel guilty, I think that there's some strange things about that. So I have to, another disclaimer here, one more time. I have not eaten at Alchemist, and I cannot put any sort of criticism towards it as a restaurant because I've not eaten there. I'm talking conceptually and based on talks and based on what are we trying to communicate that this restaurant does. These are the things that come to my mind. So Rasmus Holm goes on stage and he says, why can we not do these things? And I'm really wondering, how can we make art and gastronomy be recognized as an art? And that's actually very interesting, because just before Rasmus Monk, I believe, we had the Danish Minister of Culture. coming in saying, now we are actually considering gastronomy as an art form. We are recognizing gastronomy as an art form. And I'm like, who gives up? You want probably the most boring person in culture, which must be the Minister of Culture. And I'm not talking about him in specifics, but in general. The Minister of Culture must be the less artistic person in arts, right? You want that guy on the behalf of the state to say, we recognize you as an art form. And I'm like, okay, grants and stuff, but is that what art needs? Isn't that boring? How can you on one side want to provoke, and on the other side, you want to be recognized by the ultimate father-in-law, like the most boring character you can find, the state? What is provoking about that? I just don't get it. I just don't get why we want and need other people to recognize gastronomy as an art. He comes up and says that. Rasmus Monk says, oh, I'm so excited that now we can finally be considered an artist because the Minister of Culture is saying it. I don't get it. To me, it's pointless. That said, other speakers come up. I don't remember all of them. Some were more interesting than others, but something I would like to point out, and there was one scientist, researcher, and I'm very sad to say I cannot remember her name. And I looked it up. I cannot find a program for this thing anywhere. There's no way of finding her her name, her title, or what she does. She's a researcher. She was French. She had a very eloquent way of talking about her research within cooking as an art form, and I thought it was wildly interesting. And I think the most interesting thing she said was, let me see, was to say the troublemakers, as in Plato, Aristoteles, and Kant. She called these three boys the troublemakers because they created, in different variations, as later on read, the hierarchy of senses. Interesting point, because when you make a hierarchy of senses, you have to understand, sight and hearing much above taste. At least that's what they did. So they put sight and hearing as the cognitive senses, what made you understand life, what made you understand the world, and taste, put it down low. Taste considered almost animal. That's really interesting. So her point was that Alchemist, that is now the ultimate expression of culinary arts in her mind, is called the holistic cuisine. They would better that wrong by making taste very much at the top of this, or putting it back on the top of this hierarchy of senses. But I want to challenge that. I want to challenge that because I think that this shows more than anything what is the problem with cooking today. Alchemist is considered very creative, and it's creative, artistic, and she described it as performance art. But there's something wrong here, because when you look, again, I've not been in the restaurant, this is not a critique of the restaurant, I've not eaten any of it. I'm thinking conceptually. If you look at what they try to do, they have, Rasmus Munk said it himself, we have graphic designers, we have script writers, we have, I don't know, stage builders. They hire people, I don't know what functions they have, but it has nothing to do with normal restaurant procedures, operations. They're doing all the shit around it, right? And if it is considered a restaurant that has this capability of righting the wrong of this hierarchy of senses that has put taste down below and bring taste up at the top, why do they do everything around it? Why is everything around it so important? Because I find that if you think about cooking as an art form, what it should do is it should start with taste and put taste at the top of this hierarchy. Right? So when we have taste at the top, you can do all the shit around it, which is sight. Now plating, obviously, is extremely important. We all know you eat with your eyes as well. That makes a lot of sense, right? The dish, the way the dish looks, it's appetizing, it tells you a story also, but the taste and this supports it, but taste should be above it to some extent. Now this is not something that a lot of people spend a lot of time on calibrating this way. It's quite often, I would say, unfortunately, calibrated the other way. It looks great, tastes like nothing. Then, you can expand this to performance. There's a lot of shit going on around it. Sounds, that's hearing. Sounds. Screens. Staging. Provocations. But there's a lot of shit, and I'm not sure that this is at the top. Because if you don't feel, like if you're confident within your art, and your art is cooking, I believe that you should be capable of using, yes, the other senses around it, to create an emotion and a setting for where the taste is lifted up at the top. And again, not a critique, but I have a hard time seeing how the taste is at the top when there's just so many layers built on top of it. I think that the true culinary art should be able to be reduced to a spoonful that you put in your mouth and you must be like, wow. You know, you can tell a story right there. You can, do a mussel stock with some saffron that is, If you have a heritage, you have an Iranian heritage, and saffron from Iran is particular, and then when you make this mussel juice, it reminds you of your childhood, and you taste it, and it's like you're telling a story, but you're not punching people in the face with it. It's subtle. You resonate with some, not everybody, because not everybody gets it, and that's the point. If you have to put so many tools to use to make people understand your point, it's lazy. It's easy. Because the only difference of what makes this possible is cash. It's just a lot of fucking money being burned to make a Cirque du Soleil kind of event around a dinner. And is it an art form? Yeah, it is. But is it the outmost and greatest expression of the culinary arts? I doubt it. Because if you are a craftsman, you, as in cooking, obviously, I'm talking about trying things, tasting things thousands of times. Then you speak a language that is exclusive. Not everybody speaks that language. Which means that then when you get something and you experience something that touches you in this way, it resonates with you and it moves you in a particular way. And that is sublime. And that is next level. And that to me is great art.